Helping people to master the art of communication is exactly our reason for existing at the Colin James Method. I thought I'd spend some time with you today discussing the 4 types of communication. We'll also discuss what each type will add and enhance to a piece of communication and discuss some of the pitfalls that can be involved too if we use the wrong communication type in the wrong context. The first type of communication that I'd like to discuss is verbal communication. That's using your mouth, talking, using words. Now, what can verbal communication add to any piece of communication? Well, when you're talking, it's your core content. It's the message, the words you use is the communication. It's how you're contextualizing it and coding it for your audience. What does it enhance? Well, good use of verbal words will also convey tone and emotion and emphasis through variations. This can clarify and reinforce the message if done well. Of course, one of the challenges of verbal communication is one of its biggest strengths, and that is its ability to convey emotion and meaning. And while conveying emotion and tone is a wonderful thing to do because it really can add value to the message, too much of anything can be problematic. And if we're overly emotional, then the message can get lost between the emotion. We can lose clarity, or it can be off-putting for some of our audience members. The second type of communication is nonverbal. What's that? It's our posture, our gestures, the way we move. Also, it can be the tone, the way our voice sounds, as opposed to just the words we choose. These are nonverbal communication cues that we are sending to our audience. Now, what can it add? It can add additional context. It can include messages through use of the face. It can really convey the spirit behind which a particular piece of communication is being launched at an audience. How does it enhance communication? Well, similarly to verbal communication, it can add a lot of hidden meaning that we wouldn't get if we were just reading a word on a page. We can get tone, we can get emotion, we can get context. Non-verbal communication can be very effective in that way. It can also add some really great variety in the way we communicate. Think about the idea of using gestures and what that can do for you. For example, a profitable year is nothing like a profitable year. A potential drawback with non-verbal communication is it can sometimes send quite unintended messages. For example, the way we use our gestures or our posture can sometimes put the lie to the words that come out of our mouth or completely flip the meaning of the words. Let me give you an example. I'm going to say the same thing twice with exactly the same words and tone of voice, but I'm going to change my gestures, and you watch how this changes the meaning of what I'm saying for the audience member. Are there any more questions? Are there any more questions? So you can see there is a lot of power in non-verbal communication, but we need to be sure we're using it the right way at the right time. The third type of communication is written communication. That's the written word on the page or on the screen, as it so often is these days. Now, what will that add? Written communication adds absolute clarity. The word is there, it's visible, we have an audit trail, we know exactly what was said by whom, and that can be very, very powerful when it comes to permanency and clarity of message. What will it enhance? Well, it will enhance precision, of course, but it will also enhance being able to be organized and being able to convey a concept well, particularly a complex concept. Sometimes seeing the words laid out on the page really assist in that regard. Now, the danger with written communication, as I'm sure we've all experienced in the workplace, is it is very difficult to convey tone and sometimes context with words. Have you ever written an email that was misconstrued in its intent by the person at the other end? Yeah, it's probably happened to all of us. And I would say, in my experience, 95 times out of 100, the reason that email gets misconstrued is not necessarily because of the words we chose, it's because it's very difficult to convey tone in writing. That's why emojis are so popular. People can put a laughing face or a winking face and try and add some tone and context to the message. But in a formal communication sense, we have to be very careful about what we use written communication for and where we think maybe picking up the phone might be a better idea. The fourth type of communication is visual communication, what the eyes can see. Is this related to non-verbal communication? Yes, absolutely. In fact, all 4 communication types are related to each other to some degree or another. But when we think about visual communication, let's think about the idea of visual aids. What are people seeing when we communicate? In the world of business, what's the most commonly used visual aid? Well, we know it's PowerPoint. And I bet you've all been paralyzed by too much PowerPoint in your careers. It's happened to me too. That being said, visual communication can be very, very powerful enhancer of any message. What does visual communication communication adds images and graphics and icons which can really make your message pop and sparkle and add variety, keep people engaged with the message. Sometimes words, no matter how interesting a speaker you are, need to be broken up with something visual, something to appeal to the eye. We talked before about the idea of nonverbal communication and gestural language and posturing. Like I said, it's related to visual communication. That's important too. What visual cues are you sending to your audience? What can it enhance? Well, it can simplify things. Sometimes something that is quite complex to describe verbally or in writing is very easy to represent visually. Even simple shapes, like if we talk about a triangle with different concepts at each point, yes, I could probably explain that quite clearly in words, but simpler, quicker, and easier for you to absorb if I just show it to you. That's what visual communication can do for us. From a pitfall point of view, well, I've already talked about the danger of too much PowerPoint, too much data. We can overwhelm people with visuals, and I'm going to now share with you the number one thing I see people get wrong in communication in business when it comes to using visuals. The visuals are not acting in concert with the audio or the verbal experience. So my talk track is not elegantly synced with what I'm presenting visually, which causes people to either completely switch off from what I'm saying and just look at the visuals, or vice versa, fully concentrate on the words, and I may as well not be showing the visuals. So controlling that audience experience and making sure our visuals artfully match the verbal aspect of our communication is particularly important. So there you have it, 4 types of communication: verbal, non-verbal, written, and visual. I'm often asked, which of the 4 communication types is the best? And honestly, the answer is, it depends. One thing's for certain though, all 4 communication types most certainly have their place, but all communication is context dependent. This I do know though, if you want to master communication anytime, anywhere, in any context, learning to use all 4 effectively and when to use them is an essential skill.